join us for an hour of Flashback Sports.
Where we look back to the sports of the 70s through today and relive the good,
the bad,
You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
the ugly,
the really ugly,
the cool,
the Joe Cool,
the characters,
the many, many what were they thinking moments,
and what made the 70s the 70s.
the events,
Down goes Frazier!
the rivalries,
Wanting to go at each other now, huh?
and of course, the fights.
Welcome to Flashback Sports with Gil and Dave. I hope everyone had a nice holiday. Before we get our special guest, Mike Vaccaro, great New York Post columnist, and he's writing his new book, The Bosses of the Bronx. Great book. Got to wish my son John a happy birthday, happy 22nd birthday.
Birthday, John.
But I'm so happy to have Mike Vaccaro. I read his article all the time. It's probably the only reason why I get the New York Post delivered to my house. He's one of the main reasons. So we want to let's bring Mike on now, and we thank him for his time. Hey, good. Hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing good, guys. How are you? And happy
Yes,
birthday!
great.
Happy birthday to your son.
Yeah, thank you for your time today, Mike. I really enjoyed this book, Bosses of the Bronx. I'm a big Yankee fan from 1969, and I've learned some stuff I never knew about them. But tell me, what was your impetus for writing this book?
You know, I know a lot of younger generation Yankees fans, and even some guys, frankly, of our generation who kind of have selective amnesia, who only remember a certain version of George Steinbrenner. You know, when he was a little up there in years, and you know, he was a lot more popular in those years than he was in the 70s and the 80s, because he was just kind of letting things go. People forget what he was like in the 70s and the 80s, and it was unlike anything we've ever experienced with an owner in sports ever. We'll never see anyone like him again, ever. But he was one of one. You know, he was involved. He was over-involved. He craved the back page. He craved attention. He craved getting into fights with his players and his managers. And, you know, that was all part of being a Yankee in those years and playing for George. And, you know, for better or for worse, people seem to remember him as a guy who would snap his fingers, fire people, and everything would work out, which isn't quite how it worked out. And I think that was kind of one of the reasons I wanted to write this book, because, you know, his was a really fascinating life. He was certainly worthy of being preserved between the covers of a book. And that's what I tried to do with this.
Yeah. It seems like there's very few people in sports or in life who had a kind of a 180-degree turn or shift in terms of the perception of him. There's talk of him. I think you even mentioned in the book about potentially being a candidate the whole time. He's generally speaking liked to be loved, and not that many people have horrible things to say about it. Maybe that generation is gone. But he was booed out of the stadium. He was booed relentlessly. Guys like Gil and I, we were happy when he was banned from baseball, because he was just
you weren't alone.
It's not funny when you're losing. And in the mid-late 80s and early 90s, we were losing. And when he was banned with the Howie Spira stuff, we're like, good riddance. We're not winning. This isn't working. We're becoming a laughing stock. But yet, winning is a great perfume, I guess. But he must have changed as well, because people generally, have just great things to say about him now. The ball players and even the managers.
Well, look, he was always a loyal guy, and even when he would have skirmishes with guys, he'd always hire them later on to go work at spring training. So I mean, he always, he knew how to treat his players, and so there was that element to it. I don't know that he changed much. I just don't think he has much to complain about later on. He used the right term. I mean, it's very similar term I use. Winning is the greatest deodorant there is. And in his final years, there wasn't a lot to complain about if you're George Steinbrenner. And that's in the same way. You don't hear a lot of Knicks fans or Rangers fans, or Knicks fans anyway, who were complaining about James Dolan as much as they were 4 and 5 years ago. Why?
Right.
Because they're winning, and when teams are winning, you don't talk about the owner. You only talk about the owner when the team is losing, because you want somebody to blame. And that's what Steinbrenner's was. Steinbrenner, of course, took it to another level because he was so involved in how the team was developed and built in those years. And so, he would hear about it, and he would, it wasn't just that he got booed. I mean, people would chant his name with, either one unprintable name in front of it or one unprintable name after it. And it was, it was ugly. And he didn't, but he didn't care. He didn't change. What changed was the fact that, when he came back, you would think he would came back and chase a man. And, they gave him a nice playoff run in 95. And he fires the general manager that made it all possible. And he basically runs the manager out too. So he was still the same there. And he just, what he wound up doing was getting really lucky with Joe Torre and Brian Cashman. And these guys just started winning championships for him and never stopped.
Yeah, Mike, in your book, you mentioned how you met Steinbrenner. You want to tell the audience how you got to...
Yeah, look, I covered him a bunch, in group settings when I was at the Star Ledger because, he was part owner of the Nets for a while, so I got to know him a little bit there. I was also a baseball writer in Newark, so, we knew each other. But when I was at the Post, your relationship with Steinbrenner always changed when you went to one of the New York papers because that's really all he cared about. He cared about the Daily News, the Post, and the Times. And so when I moved to the Post, not long after, I was trying to reach him, and we played phone tag, and he finally reached me at 3:30 in the morning, California time. He was driving to the office in Tampa, and he's like, "You sound like you were sleeping." I'm like, "I am sleeping. It's 3:30 in the morning here, George." But we had a really nice talk, and from that time on, the last 8 years of his life, when I was around him to talk to him, he always returned my calls. He always was newsworthy. He always gave me a boatload of back pages, and that's all you can ask from a subject. And now he's giving me a book too, so I guess he went above and beyond. 16 years later, he's still delivering for me.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Is access? I imagine now in this day of digital media, it seems to me like your generation and the generation before you, then, we grew up watching, reading, whatever guys like Maury Allen and Phil Pepe and a lot of the guys that came before you. And then it seems to be this generation here, it's got to be a little frustrating for folks like yourself, I'd imagine, just because maybe that same level of access is not there, or it doesn't maybe necessarily, it's not as critical maybe for George to reach out to you in this day and age, or how.
Teams all have their own websites. They all have their own,
right?
News operations. And look, they'd rather those places deliver their version of the news because it's not, they're getting paid to, they're paying these people to do it. It's basically glorified public relations, most of it. And I think we're lucky in that I think there's still a fairly sizable portion of the people who are. Who follow sports, you want to get like the real story behind things, and you're only going to get that from somebody who's willing to report stories and talk to people. And there's a lot more limited access now than there used to be, and it makes it harder. But you know what, I do feel bad for the younger generation of guys coming up because, look, I was around when there was access, so I have my contacts. My phone is full of people I can call because of my years of doing it. Guy doesn't want to talk to me before a game. I got somebody else I can talk to. I know who to call. It's a little harder for guys coming up and women coming up, which is a shame. But again, you're not supposed to be fed this stuff. You're supposed to get it on your own, and so that's part of it. You just have to say, oh well, I guess I'm not going to talk to this player today. I got to figure another story. That's part of the game. It's always been that part of the game. And look, at the end of the day, what we're really trying to do is break news. So, after a while, you're on a beat for a while. You're in town for a while. You know the people to call who are going to help you through a story, and that's kind of what I rely on more now than access, so to speak. Although certainly, if someone's going to give me access to a player, I'm going to take advantage of it. But you've reached a point where you have to learn how to kind of work around the access periods, and that's what usually delivers the better kinds of stories.
Mike, growing up in, like, me and David, same age, we were from the Bobby Mercer era, Horace Clark, Dad taking us, my dad was a fireman, and we'd sit up top and then go downstairs. Nobody was there in the early 70s. The only time it was packed was Bat Day or anything. Well, Old Timers Day. Those are the 2 days that were crowded. And so we had the CBS days. And then when George came and he infused all this stuff, we got excited, when he was able to get some of these free agents, and we had a buzz here, and we actually won. And like I said, then in the 80s, it started getting a little old because he started, making all these moves and not really giving a lot of young players a chance to we had a lot of talent that were, Doug Drabick. I saw kids, when I went to Albany, we saw these guys play and they became very good players, but George didn't have that. Now, in retrospect now, we go back and say, oh, I wish George was here and this, that, because we look at the allure of all the good stuff and like you said, not the bad stuff. But sometimes we wish Hal would react a little bit like George. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I understand it because, look, Yankee fans haven't won a World Series in 17 years, and that's a long time for anybody. It's really a long time for the Yankees, who aren't used to that, except for the fact that George oversaw a stretch of 18 years without a championship. And why did he do that? Because he was way too involved. Because people forget that part of the reason why the Yankees won more baseball games than anybody else in the 1980s, but didn't have a championship to show for it, is because George would show up in the middle of the year, and the Yankees had a term for it. They called it, we got Georged. He'd issue a statement, he'd pick a fight, he'd make a trade, and then all of a sudden they were going to finish second to the Blue Jays or the Tigers or the Red Sox. And so, look, I understand. Look, I mean, nobody has a job for life. I'm not saying that Aaron Boone can't get fired. I'm not saying that Brian Cashman can't get fired. I'm not saying that Yankees fans shouldn't want to win more championships, but I am saying that if they think that it was just George snapping his fingers and making things happen magically, that just didn't happen. There's two things that are important to remember. George had his own period like this where the problem was he was too involved. People forget that. But the other thing that's also important to remember is that, look, I'm not taking anything away from George by any means. I mean, he was the guy who had the vision for the team. He was the guy who saved the team from moving out of town from the first place. But, he was a guy who won, 7 World Series. He had two periods of prosperity. And both times were when he was out of the game. He got suspended twice. The first time when he was suspended, Gabe Paul built the team that ultimately won the 77-78 team. That was Gabe Paul's team. It wasn't George's team. George was in charge, but he was out of the picture because he was on the sidelines. Gabe Paul built that team. And many years later, when he was out for the second suspension, it was Stick Michael who did it by not trading away young players, by building things his way without the interference that George had. And by the time George came back, they had a team that was ready to compete. So it is important to remember that everybody wants to assign all this amazing capacity for success to George, and he was a big picture success guy, and he certainly approved a lot of terrific expenditures and so forth that made a difference. But these teams were built with that, when he wasn't in the picture, and there's a reason for that, because he was too involved, he was impetuous, he was impatient, and that's what you get. And people who just automatically say, "I wonder what George would do." Well, I think George probably would have probably traded Aaron Judge 5 years ago. That's what I think George would have done, or something crazy like that. That he would have. It's not beyond the capacity. He would have done that.
Mike, you talked about a lot of great incidents in the book. I want to play a couple quick videos, and see what you say about this. Ashley, if you could play number 1 and number 3 back to back.
Randolph away over at first base. The 1-2 pitch to Watson, line drive, base hit, could be trouble in the corner. Wilson over to chase it down, plays the carom. Randolph rounding third, they're waving him home. Here comes the relay from Brett. He is out! Perfect execution by the Royals as Steinbrenner watches on. The inning over here in the 8th. As the Royals cut him down at home plate on the relay. Wilson to Brett to Darrell Porter. And we go to the last of the 8th with the Royals leading by a run, 3-2.
Now they're going to measure it across home plate.
Well, I've never seen this.
I never have either.
I don't know what they're measuring. They might be going to call George Brett out.
Well, the Yankees win it. He's out.
Yes, sir.
Brett is out. Look at this. Brett is out. And
he's steaming mad.
He is out and having to be forcibly restrained from hitting plate umpire Tim McClellan. And the Yankees have won the ball game 4-3. Brett is called out for using an illegal bat or with the illegal substance on the bat.
Like I said, I have seen this before, Frank, and Gaylord Perry just took the bat away from home plate umpire Jim McClellan.
I tell you, the smartest guy in that whole video was Dick Hausner, because he never went back for number 2. But talk a little bit about some of those incidents that you wrote in the book and how crazy they were. Mike.
Look, the first one was in the ALCS in 1980, and George blamed the third base coach for sending Willie Randolph, which of course is silly. I mean, Willie was running on his own But that call, you saw how happy George looked in the stands right afterwards. And he, what the camera didn't see was a few minutes later, he was going by Mike Ferraro's wife and saying, "Your husband just cost us the season."
Wow.
So George wasn't afraid to say what was on his mind. And the Pine Tar game, of course, was crazy because no one's ever seen a protest overturned, and yet, the next day Lee McPhail, who used to work for George as the general manager before he became the AL president, he overturned that ruling and ruled the home run was good. He reread the rule book, and the rule book actually said that you just had to take the bat out of play. It never said anything about the batter being out, so he was able to rule that way. And of course, George was very unhappy about that. So, yeah, those are two of dozens of stories just like it. That you think that these things. So you're on certain teams. You're like, well, that's a crazy day. And around the Steinbrenner Yankees, that was Thursday.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mike, you mentioned it kind of reminds me. I see Steinbrenner like that because even then I remember thinking it's a long time ago. When I watched the Cowboys lose, one of the great things I enjoy watching the Cowboys lose is watching Jerry Jones' reaction, watching him being upset. I just get a great satisfaction as someone who can't stand the Cowboys because Jerry Jones is kind of the Steinbrenner of that generation, and the rest of the country hated Steinbrenner because of the big, Yankees, evil empire stuff, buying of free agents. But that just kind of reminded me of that. I did want to go back to what you said,
Jerry Jones is somewhat. I can see where you put him in the same conversation, but even Jerry Jones, doesn't hold a candle to George for the crazy and for the zany and for the kooky and for all of that. I mean, there's just so many of these instances that are, George is either a primary or a secondary part in it, but they're all nuts, and you don't see it any. Where else do you get a Pine Tar game up at Yankee Stadium in 1983? It's just, that's where it was going to happen.
Mike,
you made the comparison. I think you talk about Al Davis a little bit in the book. They naturally somehow they were good friends.
Yeah, they're good friends. They were born exactly a year apart from each other on the 4th of July, and Davis is really the one guy who's kind of holds a candle to Steinbrenner in terms of he was a New Yorker. If he never owned the Giants and the Jets, he'd have been like Steinbrenner in football, but he wasn't. He was in Oakland. They're a lot more laid back out there, but he had the same kind of I want to be involved. I want my fingerprints all over this. And, I think Al was a little better at assessing football talent than George was assessing baseball talent. So he was probably better equipped for it. But definitely personality-wise, they were certainly very, very, very close to each other.
Mike, you had a nice story, too, with the Yogi Berra where when he got fired, or I think it was an article when they were together, and I think Yogi blew his top and stuff. Talk a little bit about that, and then why it took so long for Yogi to come back to the Yankees.
Yeah, well, George wanted to blame Yogi for the for the Yankees' miseries in 1984, and basically Yogi just lost it and said, "These are your players. This is your team. He's like, don't look at me. I got horsebleed players because of you, and this is what we're doing. And people rarely saw Yogi blow his stack like that." And of course, the next year he got fired, and George didn't have the gumption to tell him to his face, and so Yogi stayed away for 13 years. And his family, his friends kept begging him, "Yogi, you got to go back. You got to go back." And to his credit, I guess he never would, but he lost out on 13 years of adoration among the fans. Of course, he made up for it by the time he got back. They trotted him out every couple of weeks, and he got his share of adulation at Yankee Stadium in the latter 10 years of his life. But yeah, I mean, look, Yogi was a prideful guy. He wasn't going to put up with a lot of George's nonsense the way a lot of the other people did. And he didn't have to. He was Yogi Berra. He was going to survive with or without the Yankees, with or without George Steinbrenner. And those were always the guys that were always, I think, more difficult to get along with George because George knew he couldn't control them.
Mike, there was a lot of talk about Billy Martin and George Steinbrenner relationship. If you play a video 2, and then we'll have Mike comment about the Billy Martin and George Steinbrenner, I guess part 5 or going to be even part 6 at one time, right? Play number 2, please.
I have every reason to believe that we will have a great relationship and that we're going to go back to a winning basic formula and bring back a championship to New York. And you've got to go with a winner in order to get a winner. And as you look at the records of the various managers, there are only 2 or 3 managers in baseball today active who have winning records from the time they started managing. And Alfred Martin is one of those fellas.
I've had a lot of long talks with George. A lot of guys are going to wonder how we're going to get along. I'm sure you're going to ask me that question later on. Well, we've straightened a lot of things out. For instance, I'll be handling all the trades.
What do you mean?
There'll be no phone calls in the dugout.
What do you mean? That's not right. I'm handling the trades.
That isn't the way we say
I
it,
have the
George.
right to call you in the dugout.
And that's not the way it's going to be,
You're
George.
damn right it is, and if you don't like it, you're fired.
You haven't hired me yet.
Talk a little bit about that relationship with Billy and.
Well,
and
that was a little more contrived than the beer commercial was, but the beer commercial was funny because that was 2 days after he got fired and 2 days after he got rehired the first time. Look, I mean, they were addicted to each other. Billy was in a lot of ways exactly what George wanted as a manager, and he was exactly what he didn't want as an employee because he spoke his mind, and that's why Billy was such a popular figure among the fans, because I think we all want to tell our boss off now and again, and Billy had no problem doing it, and doing it publicly. Look, I mean, they kept coming back to each other. There probably would have been a sixth reunion if he'd been, if he hadn't passed away on Christmas Eve, 1989. I mean, there was every indication that he probably would have replaced Bucky Dent the next spring sometime pretty quickly. So yeah, it was of all the craziness that took place in the 37 years George ran the team. The years with Billy Martin and the incidents with Billy Martin were probably right at the top of the list. Either that or Reggie.
Mike, tell us what you know about I want to talk about the George Hal dynamic, because as you mentioned today and then in your book, you talk about what would George do, because every time something goes wrong, what would George do? Or George would have done this. George Steinbrenner owned, I think one of his former limited partners famously said, there's nothing more limiting than being a limited partner of George Steinbrenner.
Yeah, John McMullen said that. The former Devils owner.
Yeah, exactly. And so George ran the show. And one thing I always felt good about with Steinbrenner, you'd always say about Steinbrenner, he put all the money back into the Yankees. I don't know that the Yankees made money a lot of years, even the championship years, they put all the money back into it. It seems to me that the dynamic has changed because the Steinbrenners don't really own the Yankees anymore. It's the global, whatever the Yankees global network is, of which the Steinbrenners own a portion of, and they own a portion of the Yankees. How much is this still all Hal, or does he have partners that are controlling the purse?
The Steinbrenners have always had partners. Don't forget, I mean, George was a limited partner when he bought into the team. He always had partners. He always he was not a man of overwhelming wealth. He needed partners to be able to finance his visions. But here's what you have to remember is that, like in 1977, the team that was called the best team money could buy, that payroll cost $3 million. And even if you want to laugh at that number, like you laugh about hearing there's a $5 loaf of bread or whatever, even if you translate that to $2,026, that's about $17 million, which is about what you're going to pay, Aaron Judge before the All-Star break. So, George was having conversations with his partners about not being able to pay out dividends. And, he would laugh and say, what's the cost of your season tickets? It's a lot different conversation that Hal's having with his partners when sometimes the ball player, you're going to wonder if you're going to pay him $750 million. That's just different. They don't have, George didn't have to deal with the conglomerate that owns the Dodgers. He didn't have to deal with the conglomerate that owns the Blue Jays. He didn't have to deal with a rich owner in New York. I mean, he was dealing with austerity owners in New York most of his time there. So, it's very different. There's only so much that that one guy can do. I think it's extraordinary that the Yankees have remained consistent in wanting to pay $300 million payrolls, because we see that doesn't always exist. We think of the Dodgers as being unbeatable, and they should have lost the World Series 3 different times last year. So, it's more than just money. Baseball is a game that's based more than any others on well-timed bounces and poorly timed pitches. And, sometimes they go your way, sometimes they don't. Sometimes you get a special team that's capable to play through all those things. But, I think anybody who thinks that Hal doesn't have the same level of commitment that his father does isn't paying attention. Because he does. It's just it's a different time and it's a different world.
Mike, I was thinking too, like in the 70s with the free agency, and like it was only one game of the week, and the cachet being in New York and coming to New York now, really now, like you said, there's media in every city and all that. I mean, in the 70s, when the Yankees went on the road, that's when everybody went to the games. They would go to Detroit and 40,000 people would go. Remember when Mark Fidrich they had a full house to see the Yankees play. So I don't know how that's changed. I think it's frustrating as Yankee fans is when we see all these plays, like when we had Matsui and stuff, like we're not players sometimes in some of these transactions. Like, why are the Yankees? I know everyone say, well, the Dodgers. Like, that's why I think sometimes we get frustrated because we got someone like, say, Harper, who before he went to the Phillies, wanted to come to the Yankees, and the Yankees didn't seem like that. They, years ago they might have tried to get him. So it's like a balance.
Yeah, and I think it would have been a mistake because you wouldn't have had Aaron Judge then. So I mean, these are all things don't all exist in a vacuum. The Dodgers pitchers, they weren't coming to the Yankees. They wanted to play in California. Hal can do a lot of things, but he can't move the Yankees to Los Angeles. He can't move it closer to Japan. These are all the, and I think back in the day there were players that found New York more appealing because back in the day, if you wanted to be a star, you had to come to New York. You don't have to come to New York anymore. LeBron James proved that. He never played in New York, and he made more endorsement dollars than anybody else. Same with Michael Jordan. You don't have to be beholden to New York, and players aren't anymore. A lot of times they just go to get the last nickel, and sometimes they don't want to put up with the stuff that you put up with in New York, and that's got little to do with the owner and a lot to do with the city. And and that said, I mean, we're not talking about a team that's gone sideways either. We're talking about a team that wins 95 games a year. And that's not nothing. And I think that's what annoys me when people get on Hal. It's like, ask your Met fan friends how easy it is to win 90 games every year and get to the playoffs. I mean, it's just not. And so, look, I mean, I also understand why Yankee fans are upset because you get used to a certain level of success. And nobody was more like that than the number one Yankee fan, George Steinbrenner. I mean, he's the one who invented the whole mission statement of it's championships or bust.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I tend to give them the benefit of that because they win every year. They're in the playoffs every year.
Look, there's still people still care a great deal about them, and that's the thing. I mean, the Yankees are going to be the Yankees, and I think Hal has guaranteed they're going to be like that. People can get mad at Hal, but it's not like people are leaving the flock in droves either.
No, and people want to play here. Mike, right now we really appreciate you taking the time. We want to get you back on the road, so we appreciate it. But if there's maybe just two things. One, the book. If you want to mention anything that we haven't talked about that you should want to mention about the book, and then second thing, if you can give us your two. Nobody knows more about the Knicks than you do. I'd love to get just a little prediction for the playoffs coming up. Get your take on about the book and about the Knicks.
As for the book, look, I mean, I've been really happy with the support and the feedback. I mean, I've got a lot of people who read the book generally tend to like it. I mean, I enjoy that part of it. I mean, I had a great deal of fun writing the book, and it seems to have the same impact on people when they read it, and that makes me feel really good. So, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to write it. I mean, I'm grateful for the opportunity to write about a character like Steinbrenner, who is just so multifaceted. I probably could have written 1,000 pages if my editor didn't stop me. And so yeah, I mean, I encourage people. Look, I mean, I don't think you have to be a Yankees fan. I don't really think you have to be a baseball fan. I just think if you appreciate big personalities and that are created only in America, George Steinbrenner is an only in America story, and his time with the Yankees was certainly that. As for the Knicks, look, I mean, they're coming off a great win against Atlanta last night, which I think, is proof that you can still play against good teams. I still remember the fact they beat the Nuggets by 39 points, so I know what they're capable of. But I'll say now what I've been saying just about all year, that it wouldn't surprise me if they went to the finals and won the finals, and it wouldn't surprise me if they lost in the first round. And it may sound like the ultimate cop-out, but I think that's where you are with this team, because they just are. They have vulnerabilities, but they also have a lot of toughness. They know how to win. They've won a lot of playoff series the last couple of years, so they're going to be a hard out. But they've also, they're vulnerable, and just like everybody, there's no perfect team. Even the Thunder are about as close as you have to a perfect team in the league right now. But even they had to go to the second half of Game 7 last year, and they probably did it again this year against a team like that. If it was the Celtics or the Knicks or the Pistons coming out of the East, and if it's they coming out of the West, so I think it's going to be a fun spring, and I think that's really what you're asking for. You want your team to have a puncher's chance, and I think the Knicks definitely have a puncher's chance.
Hey, Mike, the other thing is that we got a few Islander fans on the back court. What do you think about this, firing the coach with 4 games left?
Well, I think it smells of desperation. I mean, I don't know that. I mean, if you're going to do it maybe 2 weeks ago, or don't do it at all. I mean, 4 games left is silly, I think. And I guess, look, I mean, You know, one time I ripped Lou Lamoriello years ago when he fired Robbie Fatorik with 8 games left in the season, and they won the Stanley Cup. But you know, the Oilers got to get going if they just want to try and be in the conversation next week for the last playoff spots. I thought that was silly. I really did.
The other thing, Mike, when we talked about Steinbrenner, I mean, I know he was very charitable. I mean, he had all these quirks, but he also, I think we liked him as a fan because he acted like the godfather of baseball, and we liked that aura,
I get that. I mean, he was fun to be here. I mean, he was fun to cover because, he's probably less fun to work for and probably less fun to play for. But look, I get it. You're never going to, it's like he's a one of one. You never saw anybody like that before, and you'll never see anybody like that again. And I think that there's a reason for that. I mean, I think he's a very unique figure in this in the sport. Yeah, I really do.
There was another great part. I know before I let you go, play number 5, and then we'll just talk quick with Mike and about the Rick Cerrone incident with George that you mentioned in your book. Yeah, Mike, I know you mentioned that whole story when I think Cerrone struck out in a playoff game, and George
go
right down there, right? Yeah, and talk.
The night before, Steinbrenner went flying down to the clubhouse, and basically he accused everybody of being a loser and being a choker. And Cerrone stood up and had some colorful exchanges for George. And used a couple of F sharps and got right in George's face. And George was like, "Well, you'll be gone next year." And Cerrone basically said, "We'll see about that." And then he goes out the next day and hits a home run. And of course, George takes credit for it, and so did, and to his credit, so did Rick. Rick said maybe sometimes when a guy makes you mad, you want to show the boss is wrong. So,
Mike, you also said in your book the 2 biggest mistakes he said was not re-signing Reggie and I guess letting Hauser go. Was that?
He said that to the day he died. I mean, he realized he made a mistake with Hauser, and he really realized, pretty quickly he made a mistake with Reggie, that he should have figured out a way to bring him back for at least a couple more years to give him a little more dignified ouster with the Yankees than he got.
All right. So, Mike, I wish you a lot of luck. The book is a New York Times bestseller. It's called Bosses of the Bronx. It's a must-read for anybody. I mean, even if you don't like the Yankees. I mean, I found this fascinating. Mike, I really like the part. I never knew about the whole thing with Mike Burke and how he anchored the deal.
There's a whole
mention that was fascinating.
Mike Burke has a book out that came out about 40 years ago called Outrageous Good Fortune. So if you ever see it in a used bookstore, you should definitely pick it up.
All right.
Well, Mike, I wish you, I can't tell you, I just wish you continued success and look forward to reading you in the New York Post. I mean, Mike's in Sports Writer of the Year 4 times. I mean, anybody who knows sports knows Mike Vaccaro. He's the guy to read, and not a bad guy from Chaminade too. He's a good Chaminade.
There you go.
The sports writer, sports writer.
Go Flyers.
Even the sports writers love him.
Sports writer, great book. So, Mike, thank you for your time, and
thanks for doing it, Mike. Appreciate it.
Success. Really great talking to you guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Right,
thank you.
Be well.
This Flashback Sports with Mike Vaccaro. It's a great book. I really recommend The Bosses of the Bronx if you really enjoy that. And before we bring up the guys in the back, Ashley, if you could put on those couple flyers and say what we're doing here at Chapters Network. We do a lot of community here. Here's one thing that we're doing. This is a mother-daughter, the combo that they had their house. They lost their house due to a fire. So anything that you could help with the Chapters Network. Steve Vaccaro's in charge of that. There's
he looked like Mr. Peanut in that picture. Put that picture back, actually. Let me see. It looked like maybe you had too many peanuts, but it looks like all right. Well, looks like he photoshopped. Looks like what do they call that? He jumped in a picture. Anyway, yeah.
And the number, if you want to help Chapters Network, if you could put on that number, it's 516-476-6271. They do a lot of good work in the community.
Great work.
They have a fundraiser coming up, which it's called fundraiser for the Burden family, and hoping that people can see that, and if there's any kindness and charity in their hearts, that they'd be more than happy to give a call there. And then as they do, this Chapters does a lot of community work, right? With Steve Vaccaro, and they do a lot of different things and help a lot of different people in different ways. So look at it.
Ashley, can you bring up the first one again? Because I thought the folks may have had a. I'm saying maybe there. I thought there was a kind of a GoFundMe type of.
Yeah, they lost
link,
that.
but maybe not. Maybe we'll find it for later for the band. So
and they have a walk-in. So if anybody wants to get involved or do any charity, if you could put up that number again, Ashley Chapters Network 516-476-6271. They do a lot of great events and help a lot of families that really need it in the community. So I appreciate anybody's generosity, but I really enjoyed Mike Vaccaro. He's one of the fine. He's one of the best of the best, and great insight into the Steinbrenner years and what's going on. But do we have anybody? Oh, we should play. Let's play number 4 before we go into our back. Play video number 4 for Dave's Yukon Huskies.
Ebersar ahead, Boozer, that ball deflected and stolen by Mullins. Caravan, 2 seconds. Mullins tosses it up.
What do you think about Dave? I had saved that for you. I know you're a big Yukon guy.
Yeah, wish we would have been that. We would have opened with that had they won last night.
My nephew too. They were Yukon. Yeah, you wanted to open with that.
That was unbelievable, though.
Good fight, right? Even last night, they played up a really good fight.
Yeah, it was just, they made it ugly, which is what they needed to do. I mean, Michigan was just I just think they're more talented team. They're bigger. They're more athletic. They showed it on the boards. UConn couldn't get anything done inside, and
So Dave, I'm hoping
it's funny. Every game they did just enough to win. They were at no point we say in the past years where they won, where they steamrolled teams or just played on all cylinders. They kind of won ugly most of the game, which to their credit, because they're not
that's
a talented of a team, but just a bunch of scrappers.
Hey, listen, it's a credit to make the Final Four, to make the Final 2. Hey, look, 3 out of 4 years they were in the finals. I mean, that's unheard of. Think about it. That's hard to all the teams with all this NIL money, all this stuff. So you got to have credit that they got there, and 3 out of 4 years is pretty difficult.
I just wish they didn't put. I wish they didn't put St. John's in. And which they never do. They put both St. John's and UConn, 2 Big East teams in the same region, which
I know. I wanted to play.
I would like to have seen and St. John's got a 5 seed, which was ridiculous.
They got
no worse than a 3 seed.
I wasn't happy about that. St. John's did not. They did not get a good ranking there. They should.
No,
listen. They said the Big East was down this year, and 2 teams made a Final 16, and UConn they played Michigan the best out of anyone in the tournament. So. I know the Big East. Hopefully, they could get the bottom part of the Big East.
There's like 77 teams in these other conferences too. I mean, Big Ten's like the Big 20 now. Pac-10. I mean, is there even a Pac-10 anymore? The ACC has. And all these teams, SEC gets like. I know. They got 20 teams in these Big 12. Whatever they are, it's kind of a joke. But anyway,
so, Dave, are you happy with
the show?
Yeah. Who do we have in the back, Ashley, to bring on? If anybody wants to make some comments. We got Big Core. There he is, Manny St.
We got Tommy Henrik of. We got the Tommy Henrik of.
I'm always here, fellas. I'm always here.
What's going on, Big Core?
If there's a sports conversation, I'll be there, and I'll bring some kind of insight. That's for sure.
Also, hey, Big Core. Also, if there's a old sports movie, you're in there too. Remember, you're in a lot of movies there too.
A couple of really small bit parts. Really tiny parts. That's
what's going on. You doing okay?
It's not a career that I had another career that I'm still kind of doing, on a basis, and that's paid the bills. But anything about sports, you can count me in. In fact, when I heard that was going to be the case, I actually. My wife wanted to go to a trivia night tonight where there was a music trivia. And if you guess all the songs, it's called Music Trivia Bingo. And it's a really nice event with some people and everything. And tonight would have been Motown. And I would have been in my glory because I know a lot of Motown. And if I get a bingo right, I get $5 off the next meal. But I took a pass because I'm here.
There's like a name that tune or just a.
Yeah. The DJ plays a tune and you have to guess the name, and you hand out a bingo card, and so there's My Girl's on there. Then there's the Temptations, and Ain't Too Proud to Beg is over here. That's kind of the way it goes. And Linda actually won. That's my wife's name. Linda won. And
we should do a show live from Big Core's bingo night in South Carolina.
So big tour has a big.
I will suggest to the DJ, if they can, that maybe to introduce some kind of sports kind of songs that could be part of this this theme, because there's a ton of those. There's a ton of those. You know, put me in, coach. I can play center field.
Hey, so let me ask you, big come on, you're a big Pirate fan. What was your impression of George Steinbrenner being a Pirate fan?
I mean, certainly he came into the throes of free agency, and so that deal when he went out and got catfish, that woke up a lot of people. I was working at the time out in San Francisco area, and so when he got catfish from the A's, that just resonated throughout the Bay Area. And I can remember calling a couple of my buddies back in Pittsburgh, and I said, "Whoa!" I said, "Do you think Steinbrenner will have his hooks on anybody in Pittsburgh, like Stargell or somebody? You know, they're going to be able to pay him because Stargell was still, he was a big time guy, and the money and so on." But so that was a real eye opener for me when I saw him grab. And then ultimately down the road, all the other players like Reggie and ad infinitum. But when he got catfish, and I was out in the Bay Area, the San Francisco papers, and they were just, oh my goodness gracious, who's next? What's going to happen? And of course, a little bit later it was Reggie, obviously.
We didn't have to go take Willie from you. We went and took Willie Randolph from you.
You did. You took Willie Randolph. You took one Willie. Yeah. And he was a good player too.
Very good player.
Real good player. Willie Randolph was a real good player. And
you guys had
Goose Gossage. And you got Goose Gossage. And you got Garrett Cole. Come on.
We're not done yet.
Pretty soon you'll probably have schemes.
So, Big Cool, what do you think about the NCAA tournament? What surprised you? What were you surprised by anything or no?
Oh, the NCAA tournament?
Yeah.
No, I had my Final Four. I had Arizona and Michigan in my Final Four. I did not have. I didn't have. I had St. John's actually getting there because I liked the Johnnies. I actually did. I liked the Johnnies. I thought the Johnnies would beat Duke. I really did. I saw them play. I still follow Big East because I was from up there, and I both teams I really liked. I liked St. John's, and I liked your team. I like Villanova. I like them because I worked in Philadelphia, and I knew a lot of guys that went to Villanova, and so I root for them. And when they made the tournament, that was nice. And so, I saw a lot of Johnny games, and I kind of thought, I'll tell you what I thought was going to be the turning point, and it turned out to be that case, is the loss of that kid, Foster, the guard, and they put in the other Boozer kid, who's a good player. He's a good player, and he can grow. But I just didn't. I saw some nervousness in his game, a couple of things, and I thought Siena could have beat him. Really, I thought with 5 guys they could have taken him out, and and it certainly parlayed McNamara to get the Syracuse job, which I was happy to see. Him playing with Carmelo and all, and so that was nice. And Syracuse should be back up on top. That's a team that needs to be back in terms of basketball. So
did you say Malone went to North Carolina? Is that what Malone?
He took the Carolina job. And I'll tell you, I don't know if you saw, did you see Kenny the Jet Smith and his tirade against that?
Oh no.
He went off. Well, first of all, he's a big Hubert Davis fan, so he was upset that they fired him and let him go because he was a Tar Heel. But then after they hired this guy, he said, "Oh no," he was just odd. Kellogg is there, and Charles is there, and Bruce Pearl's there. They're all.
I didn't see that.
And he just went off. He went off on Malone because he says he's not Carolina. He's going to get rid of all the Carolina, connections, and he was starting to cite people that he knew. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And he said, and then it's going to be just like Belichick, and he just brought him in. What's going on? And
Well, you might be right about Belichick, but
it could be.
That's probably his reference. I mean, again, a lot of these guys, it's kind of like. What's his name? Michigan. I'm only hiring the Michigan man. I guess North Carolina is the same thing. They're only going to hire, North Carolina. But you get the best coach available.
Schellenberg, I
guys
was
won a championship. And,
so that's,
it is a roll of the dice. I do think it's easier to go from pros.
So big core.
To go from pros to college and college to pros.
Big core. The Penguins are going to win the Stanley Cup.
Well, in order to win, you got to make the playoffs, and they hadn't been in for the last 3 years. So any team that's got Crosby on it is a pretty darn good team. And so and they get Malkin back, and their goaltending is a little bit shaky right now. I wish they had Marc-Andre Fleury in his prime, and I think I can answer that question a little bit more definitively. But they got a couple of nice young players that they brought along. It's pretty good, and they got rid of John Henry, and he got out of there, and that's a better thing. That Boston Red Sox connection. I didn't like that at all. I couldn't stand that guy. And
I didn't realize he was involved with the Penguins, John Henry.
Yeah. His organization bought out he owned them for a period of time. And
I know he had the soccer team and the Red Sox, but whatever. So
Big call with all these with the baseball. Do you like the new changes that have come to the game with the umpire and all these? Do you think?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I was watching the MLB network there, and I guess it was probably, I'm trying to think of what it was. DeRosa, and he said, once they they went through that poor day for that CB Buckner, where he had 8 calls overturned and then everything else, and then he took one in the face and he was out and everything else. I mean, he just had a bad week as a man in blue. But DeRosa said once they make that call, to go to the automatic robo umpire, the dam is going to open up, and that's going to be the way it's going to be. They're going to get all the pitches right, and it's going to be automatic. They're going to take their umpire out of making balls and strikes, which I'm okay with. If they get it right. You need umpires to make plays at the plate and foul balls and things of this nature, and bunts, and did he bunt the ball, did he hit the ball, and all that. So there's not going to be a loss of a home plate umpire, obviously, but I'm okay with it.
I like this system. I think it's working. I think
I do too.
I'm not really big on everything being automated, but I like the idea of the challenge system because, one, I think you're an umpire. Other than having a game where you have like 4 challenges in 3 innings and you kind of look bad, these pitches are literally like a tenth to 3/10 of an inch off the plate and they're missing. I mean, it actually kind of validates actually how good they are.
Yeah.
In terms of how they can call a 93 mile an hour slider off the corner and be right, and not even challenged that often. They get it right most of the time. It's you think about how hard that is. Guys throw 100 miles an hour, and then they throw a 93 mile an hour slider. That's crossing the plate. You got to pick it up, and if you're off by a tenth of an inch, you're going to get criticized or they're going to challenge. And these batters are really good at knowing their own strike zone. And the catchers obviously have the best view out of everybody.
Yes.
Because they get to square up on the plate. Umpires usually over inside corner, outside corner. But I hope they leave it as is. Like I would rather them not go to automated on every pitch. And it becomes a little bit robotic at that point. Then the umpires only back there for plays at the plate, hit batsmen. Not even they're doing check swings and be taken out, which is fine. That can be automated because they never get that right anyway. But I'm not. I actually think this is good for umpires. It's less sharpened from the dugout. You got a problem, challenge it. You use the challenge, it's your problem. So it probably saves Boone a few ejections this season. And
it'll save umpires ejections and all that time wasted in those arguments, which I think is a lot of fault. Yeah. I mean, of course, it was great fun when you just see Earl Weaver get up to an umpire's face and then turn his baseball cap backwards and get in the guy's face and everything else, and then get booed out of the game. But at some point in time,
I want to pick up on a couple things. Just pick up on Mike Vaccaro. A couple things that he mentioned. One about baseball. He mentioned about Steinbrenner and his suspension. One of the things he mentioned in his book, which we didn't talk about here, I'm going to bring it up, is talk about this. The Yankees did better with Gabe Hall when Steinbrenner was first suspended in the early 70s, a couple of years into his political contributions.
Yeah.
But one thing he did do was when he was on suspended, a little behind the scenes, was sign catfish. So he was suspended when they actually, he threw all that money at him. And so that was kind of a big deal. It changed the franchise a little bit. the Reggie signing obviously put him over top. And Catfish gave him credibility.
Oh, yeah.
And there was just one of the great signings of all time, even though we really probably only got like 2.5 years out of him because he just had major arm problems. But he was such a class act. And watch this guy pitch was, like watching Maddox. They were saying Pepper.
He's terrific.
And then the other thing that he mentioned that I just want to pick up was on the basketball. I think he's spot on. It's exactly how I feel about the Knicks. They can lose in the first round, and they can get to the finals, and everything in between. It's absolutely wide open. Mark Bellucci's commenting about being, it's wide open. He's right here. I'm just going to read some of the comments here as well. But for some reason, I don't even think OKC is going to win. Maybe just because it's tough to repeat. I think OKC is the best team, but
yeah, we have.
Be surprised if they get knocked off.
Hey, we have. We got another guest. Let's bring another guest in the back. We have somebody in the back. Let's.
Hey.
Glenn. Hey, Glenn.
How are you going? Happy Easter.
Been good.
Yeah, great. Mike Vaccaro, what a great guest. He is so coachable. I mean, I've written to him on the email, and he writes back on his columns and stuff. What a great guy.
Yeah.
What a great legendary New York.
How do you like what's going on with the Islanders? You're a big
Big
Islander.
Court, can you mute? Big Court, can you mute? I think we got some reverb on yours.
Yeah, sure, I can. Hold on.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think I like Patrick Waugh, but we probably changed the coach 10 days too late.
Mm-hmm.
Given the way the NHL is now, with everybody gets points every night, it's almost, even though you've got games left, it's almost impossible. It's like a Rubik's Cube. Right?
Yeah.
Who do you root for? And I'd be surprised. I was at the Flyer game, and they were as dead as night. I mean, it was awful. Although I tell you, Schaefer is the real deal. He played 29 minutes.
Wow.
7 out of the last 8 minutes, and they pulled the goalie for like 8 minutes and didn't give anything up. He personally stopped 3 empty net goals.
Wow.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah, but diving, and he was just interesting.
Glenn, when you went to this game recently, you were sitting with Teddy Irvin?
No, I should be. I wish. Yeah,
tell the audience the story with Teddy Irving.
Those were the days. My Uncle Bob, we just lost him in January, but he had the Islander tickets in the 70s, and my God, those were the days. I mean, the Ranger Islander games. I mean, they'd be marching in the stands with trash cans, calling it the Rangers Stanley Cup. And my uncle hated Teddy Irvin. He hated Steve Vickers. And one time, and this is 50 years ago. So what is he, in his late 40s? And he basically stands up. We sat 6 rows from the ice and basically challenged Teddy Irving to a fight in the parking lot. I mean, it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. But,
by the way, did you guys? I'm late to the dance on this. I actually just watched it the other day. It's probably at least 12 years old. The Spano story on Net. I think Netflix did it or something. Or no, it was a 30. It was a 30 for 30. But it was by when he tried to buy the Islanders in the.
I actually at my college. Yeah, my college, King's College. I actually I showed that as part of our sports finance class because.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it's kind of priceless, right? Oh, he must have left off 7 zeros from his wire transfer. He only sent $500.
It's amazing when it was all happening. Because it was all, you remember the stories. It was on, it was off, and who is this guy? Then all of a sudden, but I never really knew sort of the level of detail, the level of shenanigans that were going on with him, and how little money he actually had. I remember thinking at the time, this guy just didn't have $200 million to spend on the team. I assumed he was, a millionaire, but just didn't have those kind of. He had, peanuts basically.
I guess the league was so desperate, right, to believe it.
Yeah.
They dropped all their protocols and stuff. It was just.
So, Glenn, being a big Islander fan, and you went through all those great things. Compared, I guess, USB to Nassau Coliseum, do you miss the Coliseum or do you like the new arena? What's your opinion about that?
Yeah, well, it's like what you always say, right? It was a dump, but it was our dump. I mean, we said the same thing about Shea Stadium. You hated it, but then when it was gone, you missed it, right? The problem with UBS, and they did a beautiful job. It's just they put it in probably the worst place on earth. The Cross Island Parkway. I mean, it's it's
there's no plan
even
B.
from
There's no,
Gil,
all right.
from like your house, Gil. It's going to the. It's like an hour to get there. It's just back is faster, but going is it's just so much traffic and just such a mess.
You don't take the train. You don't take the
If I still had the monthly, if I was going in like I used to do and had the monthly ticket, yeah, I would definitely take the train because then I wouldn't be paying the extra piece. It's easy when you get off. It's hard when you come back because the waits are long.
Glenn, of all the great Islander games you went to, tell me which one stands out as the most. What is it? The Nystrom goal, or is it something else? Tell me.
No, to me, it's like it's probably the games that are more obscure. When you go with your dad, and you have those kind of fun. And one game stands out. It was the Santa game, and this is probably 10, 12 years ago. It made like that the first last season at the Coliseum when they did the special tickets. It made one of the tickets. It was the game, and they were lousy that year, but they let anybody in for free who was wearing a Santa costume. And there must have been 1,000 grungy Santas sitting around drinking like crazy. And then they went on the Santa parade between periods, and they're out waving on the ice and everything. And finally, the public announcer gets up there, Roger, the guy from WBAB, goes, and Santa parade is over. And then nobody's getting off. They send the Zamboni out to get them, and the Santas just start doing belly flops on the ice. And then the best part, one of the Santas takes off the costume, and he's got a Ranger jersey on. 1,000 Santas go wailing on this guy, doing haymakers. And the best part is some 10-year-old kid runs the length of the ice and dives on top of the dog pile. That's like
I don't remember that at all.
One of my favorite memories. It was just, and again, it was
sounds like a Bill Veck promotion.
Wow.
Yeah, but no.
Glenn, who was your favorite Islander of all time?
You're gonna laugh. I always liked Dave Lewis.
Dave Lewis.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, I always liked Dave. In fact, when I had
like
a paper out,
when I had a mustache.
Yeah, I actually met him. I had a paper out and growing up, and we had the tickets. And I remember Gertz, the old Gertz, was I dropped the papers off there. One day I'm going there to collect the fare, the money. And all of a sudden, who's in the elevator? It's like, you're Dave Lewis.
Oh, wow.
Wow, that's funny.
That out of all the teams, my favorite team was the 75 team. Even with all the cups, I loved the 75 team. That was the coming of age team. It was the year before Trottier and 2 years before Bossy.
That's when they won. That's when they beat Penguins, right?
Penguins, the Penguins and the Flyers, but for Kate Smith, in person, right? And that was my favorite team, even though they didn't, because it was just the coming of age. Everybody was growing up. Al Arbor's philosophy was working, and they started to play better defense.
That's when I listened to the Ranger Islander game in '75, and when they scored right away, I broke my transistor radio, and that was it.
We had to watch that game. We had to find a motel out by MacArthur Airport that had MSG on the basic cable to watch.
Oh, God, wow.
Back in the day, right?
We used to listen to the game. I don't know, Dave, I didn't have cable till I think in Brooklyn till like 1989 or so. I mean, there was games just on. We were happy when it was on Channel 4 or whatever. If it was on an ABC game or when they were on the road, we with Jim Gordon and Bill Chadwick, we looked forward to those games. Even the next we didn't watch the games, unless they were there. But Glenn, we'll see. Anything is possible if you get in. Anything could happen, right? It's like the tournament. The hockey is like a tournament. It's like the NCAAs. Right time, right place. You never know.
No,
by the way, if you're listening to the Islanders in the late '70s, you heard John Sterling. People forget that Sterling did the Islander games.
He did.
John Sterling, oh boy.
And he was just like the Yankees, right? So he's be announcing also to be like Montreal. No, but he would go Montreal score. And then it'd be like Gillies, the pot fan, to Drew, and Islander goal, Islander.
Yeah, exactly.
Screaming and
screaming out.
He did the same thing.
I could actually remember the call when the Islanders lost to Toronto in '78. I was listening to it on the radio.
I was at that.
And it was an upset. Were you at that game? Yeah, the misery in his voice. And actually, I remember I was at a family's house and listening to you. And the misery, you could just feel it. You could just. I kind of remember like. You knew it was over. He didn't even say anything. You just knew like the game was over. That they lost the game, and you're right. He's exactly the way he is with the Yankees. He was with the Islanders back then. And he did the net games too back then.
That game was such a heartbreaker. That was such a heartbreaker. Chico Resch chucked his goalie stick. I still say Lanny McDonald was offsides, but then again, so was Bob Nystrom. So maybe it went down.
That's right.
I'll take the trade.
Hey, Glenn. I wish we could talk more. Guys, I hope you all had a good Easter.
Yeah. Thanks. Great
Thank
job.
you for contributing. And Driding was tough too. Yeah, Kenny Driding was tough too. Hey guys, great show, and thanks for contributing. And
Yep.
I would root for the Islanders, but I can't, Glenn. I'm sorry. I can't. I'm sorry.
Neither could I.
You're forgiven.
I'll be okay for them. I'm okay if they miss by 1 point.
Big Core had a flashback.
We'll
in
tie. We'll
75
lose on the
against the
tiebreaker. You
Penguins.
can count on it.
Yeah, that was terrible. My head exploded. That was a horrible series. A horrible series, Glenn.
Good night,
Yeah, you
everyone.
lost.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.